The following is distributed by the Berean Call.
You're listening to Search the Scriptures Daily, a program in which we encourage everyone who desires to know God's truth to look to God's Word for all that is essential for salvation and living one's life in a way that is pleasing to Him. In this first segment of our program, we're discussing Dave Hunt's book, Seeking and Finding God, a book that he wrote primarily as a follow-up to send to people that he met on airplanes or in other places where serious discussions, conversations really about God developed with those who seemed to be truly seeking after God. And Dave, you write in chapter 4, I'll quote, "It is astonishing how many millions of otherwise seemingly intelligent people are willing to risk their eternal destiny upon less evidence than they would require for buying a used car." Is that the case?
Well, most people, sometimes there are careless people. Of course, the used car salesman can talk you into things, tell you some lies and so forth, misrepresentations. I have a friend who just bought a business and somehow didn't look carefully enough, and it was all misrepresented. And now he's consulting a lawyer. How do you get out of it? But if you head into eternity and you've been believing lies, I don't know, there's no lawyer out there that you can consult. In fact, it's your fault. So, Tom, I meet people all the time like this. One of the arguments I would use with them is, well, you're a businessman, you're intelligent, you went to school, you planned your career, you took your major, and you took your training, and now you're looking to advance in your career, and one day you're heading for retirement, you hope. What have you done about when retirement ends in death? That's an embarrassing question. A little silence. Well, I haven't looked that far ahead. Well, you might consider it, because I can tell you better than most people I sit next to, because I'm so much older. It just goes. I don't know where. And Tom, you got, 18 years to catch up on me, something like that. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure you would say, where did it go?
Sure.
I can't even remember. And it's gone. It's like a vapor, James says. Okay, so it's amazing. I'm going to spend eternity. It's much longer than this life, and we can prove it. Why don't people prepare for eternity? Good question.
Yeah. Dave, you have Thomas Hobbes here, a mathematician, philosopher of the 17th century, and, you note that he spent his whole life looking at the social system, looking how man lives, looking at and really noticing the evil within man and trying to resolve some of those issues. But you have a quote here by him. He says, "Now I'm about to take," this is as death was approaching, he said, "Now I'm about to take my last voyage, a great leap in the dark."
That's a terrible way to go into eternity, Tom. Why would you wouldn't take a leap in the dark on this earth. Mm-hmm. I mean, you would be very careful. So let's get some lights on here. I'm not going to jump. Mm-hmm. I once was lost. Well, I got lost because I was in a forest, heavy forest, where the big storm had gone through there 50 years ago, uprooted the trees. These are huge pines and Douglas fir, and left holes where the roots had come out, and I made my way to the top, and I fell in a hole, and I must have hit my head, because after I laboriously made my way to what I thought was the other side, the stream was running in the wrong direction. I had gone down the same way, okay? Well, I came to, and I had no flashlight, I came to the end of some logs, and I don't know what's down there. And I'm not going to take a leap, but here's Thomas Hobbes. He's leaping into eternity.
Mm. And Dave, for some of our listeners, viewers, for the past number of weeks, we went over the options. Some people say, well, there's nothing at the end, so who cares? It's just when you're dead, you're dead. Now, we've dealt with those issues. But then I think we've established, yes, there is an eternity in front of every living being.
Mm-hmm.
So, but Dave, what about people who say, well, I've got my religion to fall back on. There are lots of religions, lots of ideas, everything from Valhalla to the happy hunting ground to nirvana, moksha, all these things.
How do you know that your religion is right? That's the question.
Mm-hmm.
They contradict one another. Most religions do, unless they're pretty close to Christianity, and then they're talking about Catholicism, for example. Now, you were Catholic. You know that a Catholic doesn't even know where he's going. Probably going to be purgatory.
Well, that's the hope.
Right.
If indeed purgatory is a reality, which the scriptures don't support that.
But how can you be sure, as a Catholic, that you're not going to commit a mortal sin just before you die?
You can't. The Pope couldn't. We've talked about it. We have quotes from archbishops and so on. That's the sin of presumption. At least it used to be.
Well, I quoted in, I don't know whether it's in this book, probably not, another one. I quoted Cardinal O'Connor from New York, and this was from the Wall Street Journal. And they quoted him as saying, I don't know where I'm going when I die. The Pope, that was John Paul II then, the Pope doesn't know, neither does Mother Teresa know. Well, I would say if the Pope doesn't know where he's going, I mean, what about his followers? The Pope was just here, the new Pope. He did leave a blessing for peace and so forth. It's not going to bring peace. Now, if they don't even know where they're going when they die, how can you be sure?
Well, they know where they want to go, but there's no assurance.
Right.
That's the belief of Roman Catholicism.
Right. But the problem is they're trusting the church to get them there. And Jesus Christ said, I am the way, the truth, the life. No man comes to the Father but by me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you better, Tom, I was sitting next to a couple of Catholics, husband and wife, and on the plane, they got a little upset because they thought I was a priest studying the Bible and so forth. And
which, Dave, seriously, that doesn't happen too often.
Right.
Not that there aren't exceptions, but they would be exceptions.
Be a prayer book.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe they didn't look closely. They thought it was a prayer book. But they wanted to know, are you a priest? Oh, you're a pastor? No, what are you doing? Well, I'm doing some research, and I said, I can tell you're Catholics, and in fact, I have right here in my file a letter from a Catholic lady. Well, she'd been married for 30 years. They had 5 children. Her husband divorced her, and he got an annulment. And I said, your church gives 60-some thousand annulments a year. Now, if they can't tell the difference between a divorce and an annulment, and they make exceptions for certain people, how can you be sure that they're right when they tell you how to get to heaven? And you could also say, and they were angry. Okay, we don't want to talk about this anymore. It's like a person says, don't confuse me with facts, my mind is made up. It's a very uncomfortable subject, and death is very uncomfortable for a lot of people. Well, then maybe we better face it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dave, this is, we talked about Hobbes and a a leap of faith into the dark, a leap into the dark, a leap of faith.
Right, not a leap of faith, though.
Yeah.
Because he had no faith, Tom. He didn't know where he was going.
Right. But for many who profess to be religious, that is they say, well, my faith is going to get me there. But as you point out in the book, many people don't really know what they believe. They have some ideas, but they're sort of hanging on while avoiding really thinking about their last breath or where they will spend eternity.
Well, but Tom, you know the contradictions for Catholics, for example, because most Catholics, except for the ones you'll find there Sunday morning or whenever, and even many of them, they're not that conscientious. And when you or I tell them, do you believe in indulgences? Do you believe in that's the way to reduce time in purgatory and so forth? No, I don't believe that. I don't go to confession and so forth. Well, I say, that's pretty clear, the teaching. And if you don't follow the instructions, you don't follow the rules, you are heading not for purgatory, but for hell. Well, I'm not worried about that. I don't believe that. Well, I say, okay, if you will not have a little concern when your church tells you you're going to hell, why should you apparently don't think they know what they're talking about in that. Why should you believe them when they tell you how to get to heaven? Good question. They don't have an answer.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dave, let's push this beyond Catholicism. You say, unquestionably, there's nothing more important than having an impeccably factual and rational basis for one's faith. Now, I'm sure not just Catholics, as you've articulated, but you could take this to evangelicals. Most people don't believe that's possible, which is sad, because it is possible.
I've had many people say to me, oh, wait a minute. And, in fact, I'm thinking now of a debate between Richard Dawkins and John Lennox. Richard Dawkins, most people would know, he's probably the leader of the New Atheists. Oxford professor, John Lennox, Oxford professor and a Christian. And Dawkins is just insisting that, faith. I mean, I guess Lennox had said, well, we want evidence before we believe something. And Dawkins says, well, then what's faith? If you have to have evidence for faith, then it's not faith. And Lennox said, does your wife love you? Oh, of course. Do you have any evidence for that? Well, absolutely. Silence. And Dawkins says, never mind about my wife. Let's get on with this. So, no, you would be a fool if you believed something that you have no evidence for. But a lot of people think, but that's where faith comes in. Mm-hmm. So we don't have to have any evidence. Faith, well, you're trusting someone, you're trusting your church. Do you have any evidence to believe that your church knows what it's talking about? No. Well, we need some evidence, and the Bible gives us all kinds of evidence, and I guess that's what we're talking about in chapter 4 here.
Well, certainly there's an idea that's so incredibly popular today that, you have your faith, I have my faith, we're not going to really get into a heated debate over it. Your belief is going to carry you this way, my belief carries me this way, but we're all going to be ending up in the same place and so on. So what's really to argue about?
Yeah, the idea that if it's a faith, then you can't put that down. Everybody has their faith. Well, they're entitled to it. Bush talks about people of faith. Mm-hmm. Well, what do you mean by faith? What faith? I guess anyone is okay, so long as you say, this is my faith. Tom, that makes no sense. I mean, a Buddhist I guess he's got faith. A Muslim, he could say, well, I believe the Quran. I just have faith in the Quran. Well, yeah, but we can show you a lot of problems in the Quran, a lot of contradictions and things that aren't true. And there are people like this who are Christians who, when you say, oh, you got some contradictions in the Bible here, you got some unscientific statements. Let's go over this. Well, no, I don't want to talk about it. A lot of Christians are afraid to even question, well, is this true? If it's not true, I tell people, look, if the Bible is not 100% true, and I mean 100% true, if I've got to pick and choose, well, I don't think that that's true. Then you are not trusting the Bible. I mean, you go to a doctor, and I know it's common to get a second opinion or a third opinion, and the doctor probably won't quibble about that. But you're about to give you the anesthesia and to go under for an operation, and you say, yeah, no, wait a minute, Doc. I want to be sure that you really know what you're doing, and tell me about your education and where you went to medical school and your practice. Because one of the problems with doctors and lawyers is they're still practicing, and that makes no sense. You have put yourself in someone's hands. You are going to have to trust them, because no one is able to know everything and has done everything. I can't be sure. My auto mechanic works on the engine. I can't look over his shoulder. Or the pilot flying the plane. Of course, you can't get in the cockpit anymore, but there was a time when you could. Well, I can't. Like, hey, guys, I want to sit up here in the cockpit with you because I'd really like to be sure that you're doing the right thing. Well, I don't know anything about flying an airplane, so how could I be sure? Well, you're going to check up on your church. No, people don't check up on their church because they call that faith. Now, that's my faith. No matter what it is that I believe, that's my faith. And Dawkins, he jumps on this. Well, you see, faith is sacred. You don't check that out. Mm-hmm. But that's not biblical faith.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dave, first of all, Dawkins is a man of faith. Atheism is a belief system.
Right.
He can't prove that there is no God, but he's working at it. Okay.
He thinks that there's evidence against God, but he cannot prove it.
Right. Dave, going back to religions, in this day of tolerance, with all the religions out there, wouldn't it be clear to people when religions are contradictory to one another that, they all can't be right?
You would think so, Tom. But that seems to just pass right by people. Mm-hmm. Or else they think, yeah, but my religion is right.
But based on, again, we'll go back to this leap of faith. Somebody says, well, I firmly believe, I was born a Catholic, I'll die a Catholic, I'm a Buddhist, I'm a Hindu, and so on. My religion is the correct religion, the right religion, and so on. And what we're asking here, the program is called Search the Scriptures Daily. Check things out. Don't just buy into it because somebody says so, whether it's Dave or myself or whoever it might be. Let's check it out. And there doesn't seem to be, people are discouraged to do that because that seems to be intolerant.
Tom, a little common sense would say, you want the police to be tolerant of crime? You want doctors to be tolerant of disease? There are some things that are right and wrong. Some things that are deadly. So, but just because it's your faith or your religion, you better check it out yourself. How do you know your church is right? Well, my parents and then my grandparents. Well, yeah, but who are you trusting? Who is the one that is guiding you? How can you be sure? Now, before you're on your deathbed and you got 30 seconds to live, you don't have time to check anything out. You better start. That's all I'm appealing for in this book, seeking and finding God. Now, Tom, we've said it often. Why do we say search the Scriptures? Why do we go to the Bible? We can prove the Bible is true. For example, prophecies. Hundreds of prophecies about Israel. Hundreds of prophecies about the Messiah, where he would be born, when he would ride, the very day he would ride into Jerusalem on that donkey, that he would be crucified. 500 years before crucifixion was even practiced. Details of his life and ministry and so forth. You cannot escape it. There's nothing like that for Buddha or Zoroaster or anybody else. And furthermore, there are no prophecies for Mary. I don't want to just keep pounding on the Catholics, but where are the prophecies that give you when Mary would be born and how she would be born and about her ministry and that we should trust her because she knows doesn't exist? Mm-hmm. And how about Muhammad? No prophecies for Muhammad. Nothing that would give you trust or confidence in the Quran, which has many contradictions in it. So we go with the Bible because we can prove it.
And somebody might be thinking, well, prophecies, what does that mean? Well, what it means is that God, the creator of the universe, has declared certain things, spoken forth that these things would take place, and the probability of these things, prophecies, as you mentioned, Dave, close to a third of the Bible is prophetic?
Right. Mm-hmm.
What's the probability of men, 40 men, over, how many? 1,600 years, that they could come up with these prophecies and that they would be fulfilled. The probability is zero. This has to be a miraculous book.
Right. The odds against it are astronomical. It couldn't happen. Mm-hmm. So, Tom, even one prophecy that, for example, that Israel would be divided by the nations, Joel 3, verse 2, that it's been conquered, but conquerors don't divide it up. That only happened in our day. That all the nations, Zechariah 12:2, that all the nations around Israel would be united against her, determined to destroy her. Well, they were always enemies of one another. They fought one another. How did they all get joined together? That it happened that Israel would be the number one burden on the whole world. It's the number one problem for the United Nations. They've spent a third of their time debating and talking about Israel, a tiny nation with 1/1000th of the Earth's population. Mm-hmm. And no, this couldn't be by chance. And this is the evidence that we have in the Bible. Nothing like that in the Quran.
Yeah.
The Hindu Vedas, Bhagavad Gita, you name them. Yeah. Sayings of Buddha, Confucius.
But sadly, Dave, what we're seeing in the evangelical church is we're really being weaned off the Word of God.
Right.
We're seeing a popular church that is becoming shallow, superficial, especially in their trust in the Word of God.
Tom, I never thought I'd live to see the day, because when I grew up, people believed the Bible. We knew the Bible. I can see myself as a little Sunday school child.
And nothing's changed about the Bible, Dave.
No, right. And we studied from the Bible in our Sunday school. And now you got Sunday school material. You got video, DVDs and so forth that have watered it down. You don't even have the Bible anymore. We got the Message, and Tom, we've gone over this before. There is no foundation for the faith. And we need to get people to understand they must know why they believe what they believe.
For more information about the Berean Call and a free subscription to our monthly newsletter, call us at 800-937-6638 or visit our website at www.thebereancall.org.